She's slaving over politics as she normally does, but I thought this would be the day that she'd take the day off and celebrate the Melbourne Cup, but not so. Liberal Party in New South Wales is represented in the Senate by Holly Hughes. Holly, welcome.
Good afternoon, Smithy.
Not even one glass?
Well, there were a group of us that popped over to one of our colleagues' office so we could watch the race. And thankfully, question time finished and the horses were still being put into their blocks when we got to the office. So we actually managed to see the race.
Good. That's celebrating of some distinction anyway.
Not how
Did you
I'd
pick a
like
winner?
Well, I got the winner in the sweep.
Oh,
But Richard, my husband, he got third in both the sweep, but was also the horse that he got me to back for him. So he's done quite well because the other two were quite short odds, whereas he got $19 to 1 for a place.
very good. Yes,
He's had a good day.
that was a long shot. Was Shiraz coming third in the Melbourne Cup. All right, 2 hours ago, the Reserve Bank took interest rates back up 0.25%. That's more heartbreak for mortgage holders. I've never actually copped the economic rationale for this to fix inflation, Holly. 37% only of Australians have home mortgages, but they have to be punished today because most of the country is spending too much. As Pauline would say, please explain.
Well, it's a third of Australians that have got a mortgage that are going to be impacted by this. You've also got a third of Australians are renting, and there'll be a lot of landlords that will be forced to potentially raise rates in response to this. So it impacts a bigger proportion of the community than just mortgage holders directly. But the issue is that this government is literally relying on the Reserve Bank and interest rate pain to fix an inflation problem that it is consistently making worse. And it's making worse because the government has no plan when it comes to boosting productivity. In fact, most of the actions they're taking, if you look at IR reforms, et cetera, are actually going to reduce productivity in the long term, which is probably one of the best ways to contain inflation. But, they're also increasing their spending across the board in so many areas. So you've kind of got, like almost if you think of it, a car, the Reserve Bank's got its foot on the brake while the government's got their foot on the accelerator. And they keep talking about these cost of living measures. Now, there'll be plenty of your listeners out there thinking, what cost of living pressures? And they're 100% right. The government talks about cheaper childcare, but we know what the reality is. Childcare providers have put the rates up, and in some cases more than the increase in rebate that the government's paying. So what parents are paying out of their pocket has either not changed or has in fact increased. So that's a furphy. They promised that energy bills would go down by $275. At the moment, we're looking at electricity up around 18.2% and gas is up 28%. And I got to tell you, I don't know what your electricity and gas bills are doing. Mine are going up by more than 18% per month. So it's just absolutely obscene in comparison to next year. I mean, it's just, my heart breaks for so many Australians today because if you're a family with a $750,000 mortgage, which, and we know in the big metro cities is almost par for the course, they're going to be paying, since Labor's come to government, more than $22,000 to $24,000 a year more on those mortgage repayments. That is a huge amount of money that they have to find after tax to just pay the mortgage. That's not factoring in that food's gone up, that as we just talked about, energy and electricity and gas prices, insurance is up nearly 18%. These families are getting whacked from every side. And I think for some people, this is really going to put a big dent in Christmas and the festive season and what they're going to be able to do.
Especially if they go again before December. You're exactly right. Or the first week in December, I should say.
If they go the first week in December, the pain that we are going to see across the country is just unbelievable. And most economists are predicting it.
Yeah. Chinese leader Xi Jinping says Australia has embarked on the right path I guess he was referring to getting back into bed with the CCP. Although Albo wouldn't say whether he trusted the president a little earlier in the day. So here we go again, Holly. I wonder how long it'll be before Beijing cuts our legs off again.
Well, or what has Albo agreed to, and what is this government going to do? I mean, one of the reasons that China took a very strong stance against Australia when the coalition was in government was because we stood up to them and we took them to the WTO. Yeah. We stood up to them about the COVID leakage and all of the problems that then the whole world was significantly affected by. Yeah. And we know that China has an unabashed expansion policy. They're moving into all sorts of areas, particularly into our backyard in the Pacific. And I mean, I just hope Albanese isn't trying to earn these sort of trade concessions based on him being quiet when China continues its expansion policy, or, Australia becoming some sort of passive observer rather than objecting to, China putting in state-owned, trying to get state-owned security systems through Australia and cyber activity that we have already seen. This stuff has to be called out. We have to defend Australia and our own sovereignty. And it'll be interesting to see what the Albanese government reaction is when there is further provocation.
Let's firstly hope that they're transparent and we can hear what deals have been done.
Have you seen this government over the past 16, 18 months? They haven't been transparent about anything.
No, you're right. We've had two Islamic preachers at the same Western Sydney mosque calling for the death of Jews and jihad. What we do know from 9/11 is that this kind of preaching is an excellent way of recruiting wayward Muslim youth that can be encouraged to create lone wolf terror attacks. It certainly encourages or recruits extreme individuals, wayward youth, to join the group. Why aren't both of these nutcases handcuffed and on the first plane back where they came from?
Well, I think the first problem is, Chris, is we don't actually know what their visa status is. So, that could be problem number one. If they're permanent residents or citizens here now, that is problematic. ASIO and the federal police, I'm sure, are very much interested.
Well, I've never heard of either of them, and I keep a watch on this sort of stuff. I've been out to the Auburn Mosque. I've been out to other mosques in Sydney. I know the community fairly well. I've got some good Muslim mates who I keep in contact with and who I interview. I've never heard of these two galoots, but this is the last thing we need right now.
Oh, absolutely. But, if you're talking to people in the Muslim community, there hasn't been one Muslim group in Australia, not one, that has come out and condemned Hamas attacks on Israel a month ago today. Not one group has come out to condemn them. And this is part of a broader problem that we're seeing. What was said by those two Muslims in those mosques on the weekend was just abhorrent, and I've seen some footage of it. And the really, really awful calls for jihad. The guy that was saying that, he had a young child climbing over the podium with him. I mean, it's just teaching this hatred is, how can we expect a two-state solution? How can we expect that there'll ever be peace when the reality is, for a lot of these people, Israel has no right to exist? No. We see these chants and hear these chants and see these signs that they're putting up from the river to the sea. That is literally a call for genocide of every Israeli.
I mean,
it's just, we hear them throwing around the word genocide. We've heard Patricia Carvelis put it on the ABC, and these claims of genocide. I'll tell you who wants to commit genocide, and it's part of their charter, is Hamas against Israel. That is their absolute charter.
And using Palestinians as human shields.
Which has always been the way they operate. This is not new. Everyone knew this was what they were going to do. There's reports that when Palestinians had tried to leave Gaza, they were blocked from doing so by Hamas because Hamas needs to use them as the human shields. They're cowards. These people are not practicing this so-called religion of peace we're told about. It is nothing but pure and utter hatred, and the anti-Semitism that it's giving rise to. I mean, it's frightening. There are places in Europe where houses where Jewish people live are having Stars of David put on their doors. Does anyone not remember history? That is where it started, in Germany.
Yeah, exactly. One last topic before we let you go and get back into the rumble. Nothing surprises me much anymore about the government-funded ABC, but this kind of falls into line with what we've seen in recent years. Out of the Courier Mail, I picked up this story where the writer talks about Auntie aiming to ensure that 50% of executive roles are filled by women, that 30% of content makers need to be culturally and linguistically diverse, and 8% must have a disability. Fancy running a taxpayer-funded corporation, an expensive one at that, and hire the best person for the job. Oh, no way.
Look, I don't know a woman, and I'm certainly one of them, that wants to be given a job at any stage of my life, a promotion, a job, anything, based on anything other than my capabilities to do the job, not my sex. It's insulting to the women.
Yeah.
It's insulting to everybody, but I can tell you if they want more diversity, I'll give them a few tips where to start. A conservative voice, maybe they need a quota for conservatives because they certainly are very, very short of them. They could start with some pro-Israel people after what we're seeing in light of most of their reporting over the situation in the Middle East. We could see someone whose entire agenda is not left of centre, and that would be a great diversity hire because they certainly don't have anyone reflective of those views.
No, none at all. But what do you expect at the ABC?
Oh, look, can I tell you, I have them in estimates. I don't expect anything more.
No, exactly. All right, I'll let you get back to the real business of being part of the Senate. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Good on you. Senator Holly Hughes from the Liberal Party representing the state of New South Wales.